3 months ago, I made a video reviewing the species concept and classification on Monster Hunter, Monsterverse, Pokemon, and Digimon, and I got several comments requesting my review on Pikmin. There was one problem though, I've never played Pikmin. In fact, I've never even watched someone play Pikmin. I didn't know anything about Pikmin other than Pikmins. I thought Pikmin is like Viva Pinata, but for these plant-like creatures. Don't get me wrong though, I love Viva Pinata. It's just that I'm not interested in plants. Since a lot of you recommended Pikmin to me, I got curious. So I replied to one of the comments and basically asked which game should I play as a start. And so I did. I played Pikmin 4. And it was a very pleasant surprise. The gameplay is nothing like what I imagined. And there are a lot of animals. Like maybe around 100 or so. Because there are 125 creatures and most of those are animals. I really enjoyed my playthrough. Well, the only time I did not enjoy it is the 7th trial of the Sage Leaf. Anyone who had played the game will probably get why. But anyway, the thing that hooked me was not the gameplay itself. It's the collection aspect. I'm not sure why, but I just really like collecting stuffs. I played Animal Crossing games just for collecting stuffs and reading about it. What motivates me is completing the museum. I've never even visited other islands or any other social aspect of the game. It's just me collecting stuffs in my own island. I also played some really niche games like Dogs and Cats in PS2, which is basically the same game, but I did it anyway for the collection. Even in Monster Hunter World, while my friends were grinding for materials early on, I spent time looking for endemic lives. The same happened with Rice. Again, for collection. In Pikmin 4, there are two things that you can collect, treasures and creatures. Of course, there is a catalog for each and you can read some stuffs about them. The treasures can be an interesting read. But of course, my main interest is for the creatures. The catalog for the creature is called the Piklopedia. In Piklopedia, you can look at their models and enter an exhibit of some kind and interact with them. You can also practice fighting them here, I think. But I've never done that, so I'm not sure to what extent. You can also read 3 different kinds of notes here. One is from an animal enthusiast, one is from some kind of a researcher, so it's more scientific, one is from a gourmet, I guess. And what I really appreciate is these scientific names and family. So, let's talk about this. But before that, I would like to tell you something. Zoology has many different fields, and so do the zoologists. There are some that focus on ecology, some on physiology, some on structure and functions, etc. My field is animal systematics, which is animal taxonomy plus evolution, which is why I put extra attention to this kind of stuff. Some of my remarks might sound petty to you, but that's because this is my field. It's like a Japanese sushi chef looking at California roll, or Italian chef looking at Hawaiian pizza. Like, not really a big deal, but it still feels kind of wrong, you know? Same with some of my thoughts that I will be telling you. Anyway, let's get into it. First, I'm gonna talk about the goods. I love the clarity of the Piklopedia. Subspecies is specifically stated. Here you can see the bulborb or the red bulborb and the orange bulborb are both the same species but just different subspecies. One is Oculus kageami rufus, rufus means red by the way. One is Oculus kageami orangium, which came from orange. Not only that, life stages are stated. Here you can see larva written in the bracket. In some creatures, even the instars are detailed. Here you can see pre-molt, which is the first instar. Here you can see the first molt, which is the second instar. And second molt, which is the third instar. Specific gender is also stated. Here you can see the male and female sheargrub. Looks different, but same species. Not only that, specific conditions are also stated. Here you can see, for example, the Titan blowhawks are just hypertrophic fiery blowhawks. The jumbo bulborbs are just polyploid bulborbs. Empress bulblexes are just graphite bulborbs. Sovereign bulblaxes are just advanced age emperor bulblaxes. Mama seergrubs are just neotenic female seergrubs, and so on. I also like that the non-classic group of creatures is stated, like the puffstool and toadstool, which is said to have the characteristics of both animal and fungi, and they make their own group called the ambulofungus. In fact, the Pikmins themselves are their own groups of creatures called ambuloradices. There are also some notes clarifying why some animals are classified into something specific. For example, the water dumple is a grub dog family, which doesn't look like grub dog at all, but it shares a nearly identical skeletal structures which is close relative. Hence it is classified within the grub dog family. Aside from the clarity, there are also various things that I appreciate. For example, when I was skimming the Piklopedia while still playing the game, something got my focus. The moldy dwarf bulborb and the moldy sludge, Parasitus pseudofungi elasticis hostus. They have the exact same scientific name. And I was like, wait, what? Did I misread that? When I actually pay attention and read the scientific name, it piqued my interest. Then I checked the toadstool. And that's it. It's the same creature, just an addition of hostus in the name. So I read the notes, and indeed, these are parasites that controls other creatures. So it makes sense. Oh, by the way, let's do a side tangent and talk about this scientific name. In zoological nomenclature, which is governed by the ICZN, we don't name creatures that way. We just stop at trinomen, which means 3 epithets, up to the subspecific epithet. In fact, I think it's the same for ICN, which governs plant, algae, and fungi. Virus could use that though. Well, to be precise, the old way of naming virus. For example, severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus. Yes, that is or was the species name for SARS-CoV, the cause of COVID. In 2021, the IZTV also standardized the species nomenclature into the classic binomial nomenclature. For example, the current valid scientific name for the SARS-CoV is Beta coronavirus pandemicum. Anyway, since they are ambulofungus, maybe they have their own way of naming a species. Who knows? Okay, back to the topic. Last thing that I want to point out is this note on the bulborb. Originally classified as the spotty bulborb, further research has reclassified this species as the basic bulborb. Subspecies of varied colors have recently been discovered, but academics are divided into 2 rival camps over how to handle their classification. This actually made me laugh because this kind of thing is actually real. Drama and beef between academics are real, and still happening. In fact, some of the drama involves how certain individuals or groups classify animals. And by drama and beef, I don't mean heated scientific arguments. I mean like insults and stuff like that. You know, like the usual internet drama. Alright, that's the stuffs I like. Now we move on to the Iffy stuffs. First, the scientific names are not written in italic. Now some of you might think it's such a petty remark, but let me explain why it matters here. Look at this for example. It would make it clearer if the specific name is written in italic. Like I said in the previous section, there are a nice level of clarity in the scientific names itself, but some could be confusing if you are not familiar with the terms. Like this for example, Oculus kageyami larva first molt. Is the larva a subspecific epithet, or is it just there to indicate its larva? Cause look at this. This one is written like this, right? Larva not in the bracket. But this one is different. Larva inside the bracket. It doesn't make sense to assign the larva to its own subspecies, so I don't think that's supposed to be the subspecific epithet. But what about this? What about that? You see? It stained the clarity. There are some questionable scientific names here, such as Pikminidae and Opisteuthidae. As a genus name, this would be invalid. Well, at least you'll most likely be urged to change the name. So, the problem is like this. Those who are even slightly familiar with animal taxonomy would probably know Idae is a suffix used for family. Well, not just animal. It's used across the codex for all organisms. There are two problems with these names. First is the formation of the family name. Family name is formed by taking the root of the genus name, then you add ide suffix to it. For example, the genus is Cervus. The family will be Cerv plus ide, so Cervidae. Genus Vipera. The root is Viper plus ide, so Viperidae. Rana to Ranidae, etc. The problem with Pikminidae and Opistheuthidae as a genus is, if you take the root and add ide to it, it will literally be the same. Still Pikminidae and Opistheuthidae. That's invalid because homonymy is illegal in scientific nomenclature. That's the first and the main problem. The second problem is, it will be ambiguous. As I've said, ide is a suffix used for family. People will intuitively think a scientific name ending with ide means the rank is family. As an academic, you should avoid ambiguity if possible, especially for scientific names, which are made to avoid ambiguity in the first place. There are also the Bloister, which are in the Molluscid genus. While this name would be technically valid, this kind of name should also be avoided to avoid ambiguity. In English language, the id suffix, id, is used to talk about family in normal sentences, like hominid for familia hominidae, bovid for familia bovidae, cervid for familia cervidae, etc. If you are talking and you say molluscid, the audience could be confused whether you mean molluscid the genus or molluscid a family. But let's take, for example, the armored cannon larva, Granitus cuculine. Even though suffix ine is usually used to indicate subfamily rank, this name can 100% be valid, because the species name itself is Granitus cuculine, both epithet. The cuculine part is not the generic epithet, not the genus name, so it's completely fine. But the name itself doesn't feel right. What does cuculine even mean? Usually, epithets that coincide with the higher taxa suffix are those that are actually a Latin word, like collocalia reginae. Reginae itself is a real Latin word, so it's completely fine. Cuculine sounds like a make-up word, which taxonomies usually call them arbitrary combination of letters. And for these cases, you should avoid making an ambiguous names like this. Another iffy scientific names are these specific epithets that ended with double I, namely pseudooculi and anacondae. For someone who is familiar with scientific nomenclature, these names will sound really weird. I suffix is usually used for an epithet based on a modern male name, like Darwini from Darwin's name, or Cuvieri from Cuvier's name. If it's from a female's name, you add ae suffix. For example, Harperae from Elizabeth Harper. By the way, sometimes a modern name is Latinized so they added I to the end. If so, same rule still applies most of the time. Even if it ended with I, you still add an extra I for males, like Hasseltii epithet, or Przewalski epithet, derived from Przewalskium or Przewalskius, which is a Latinized name from Nicolae Przewalski. For the female, you also still add ae suffix. For example, Aningiae from Aningi, which is a Latinized form of Marianning. Anyway, pseudooculi is supposed to mean fake oculus, right? Because they mimic the oculus genus. It should just be single I. Anacondae probably just means anaconda, I suppose. You can just write anaconda as an epithet. No need to modify anything. Just like the name Muntiacus muntiac, which is a Dutch word muntiac taken from the Indonesian Sundanese word muncek. There's even weird names like Kilicola Charizard. If you're watching this video, you probably know what Charizard is. Or even weirder names like Hot Wheels Sisyphus. Yes, that's a valid scientific name. So again, Straight up using anaconda as a specific epithet is completely fine. No need to change it to anacondi, and definitely not anacondi. In general, there are also some weird sounding names. For example, the Pakring blino, Naurolingus piscatum. What exactly does that name supposed to mean? The piscatum part, I mean. Because there are some animals that have piscator as their specific epithet, and that means fisher, because they consume fish. So, is the piscatum here supposed to mean they are the one being fished? If so, they should be called piscata if feminine or piscatus if masculine, not piscatum. There are other iffy names like these too, even obvious ones such as Piscipinius pardos, should be pardus, and many others. I think you already get it and it'll be boring to just nitpick on every single name. Instead of doing that, I'm just gonna give you an advice for any of you who likes to design their own creatures and or assign scientific names to imaginary creatures. So, the first step is think of the words to describe them. In English is fine. Let's say strong. Then you Google Translate that word to Latin. You'll get several words for that. Pick the one you like, then you search that word in Wiktionary. Check the declension table, pick whichever is fitting, then you can just Google the specific form to see if such epithet had been used. If yes, then that will be a safe name to use. If not, then rethink. Try another word. Quite simple really. If you want to put more effort, then be sure to check the gender of the word too. That would make it even better. Anyway, the major iffy things that I want to talk about is the blowhawks. All of them have the genus Sus, but one of them is in a different family, namely the tusked blowhawk, Sus magdentum, which is in its own family. The other blowhawks are in the blowhawk family, which is a different family from the tusked blowhawk. The problem is, you cannot have the same genus yet be in a different family. That's not how classification works. I was wondering where exactly did the mistake happen, and so I thought probably a localization error. Before we proceed, let me tell you about taxonomy in Japanese since I think not a lot of people knew about this. Japan and China have their own form of classification. Systematically, it's pretty similar to the usual structures. There are several taxonomic ranks. In the scientific language, the ranks are regnum, phylum, classis, ordo, familia, genus, and species. You're most likely familiar with the English names, right? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. In Japanese, it's kai, mon, ko, moku, ka, zoku, and shu. I'll give you the cicadere as an example. So this is the usual form that we are used to, right? In Japanese classification, there are two different forms of name. The first is called wame, which is basically the Japanese name. The higher taxa all have a Japanese name that ends with the suffix of said ranks. From top to bottom, it's Dobutsukai, literally means animal kingdom, Seikisaku Dobutsumon, literally means animals with notochord phylum, Honyuko, literally means breastfeeding class, Gutei Moku, literally means divided hoof order, Shikaka, literally means deer family, and lastly, Shikazoku, literally means deer genus. The species wame does not have the suffix and all are usually written in katakana. The wame for the cicadere would just be Nihonjika, literally means Japanese deer, not Nihonjika shu, so no suffix. Now remember, that's just one form of the name, the wame. The other form is gakume, what literally means scientific name. In academia, the gakume is usually written alongside the wame, so it'll look like this. But for the general audience, it's usually just the wame. Now, the thing about the name in Japanese version of the Pikmin is, what's localized as the scientific name for the international audience is originally just the wame in the Japanese version, so no gakume, which is why the localization team needed to do some extra lifting to make the scientific names. In the case of the tusked blowhawk, the wame is Haiiro Shishidokuri, which means ash-colored Shishidokuri, basically gray Shishidokuri. The family is written as Shishidokurika. The other blowhawks, for example, the fiery blowhawk, is Hifki Butadokuri. The family is Butadokurika. The watery blowhawk is Hifki Butadokuri Mizuhaki Henshu. Same species with the fiery, but water spout variant. That's basically what it means. Which, by the way, makes a lot more sense than the international one. Because look at this. The Olimar's note, the researcher's note, the scientific note, says that they are a variant subspecies of the fiery blowhawk. Remember, variant subspecies. Meanwhile, in the international version, they are given a completely different scientific name from the fiery blowhawk. Quite a big contradiction there. Anyway, the family is still Butadokuri. Next, the snowy blowhawk is originally Fubuki Butadokuri. The family is also Butadokuri. So my point here is, these three blowhawks are all Butadokuri, while the tusked blowhawk is Shishidokuri. That should be a completely different genus. So basically, one genus is Butadokuri, the other genus is Shishidokuri, whatever the localization will be, the scientific name. In fact, putting all of them in the genus Sus should also be invalid because Sus is already used for the real pig, like our real world pig. But I'm gonna let that slide because the researcher in universe probably didn't know our pig. Still, localizing all of them into the Sus genus is a mistake though. Oh, and another thing, the puffy blowhawk and icy blowhawk are also both Sus. The wame for them are, respectively, Wamontoge Fusendokuri and Monnashitoge Fusetsudokuri. Those are supposed to be two different genera, Fusendokuri and Fusetsudokuri. Alongside the Butadokuri and Shishidokuri, that should be four different genera in the blowhawk family. Instead, all of them are localized as Sus, which is unfortunate. Oh, by the way, same with the flint and glint beetle. Three different animals in the same genus, yet one with a different family. If you look at the Japanese version, iridescent flint beetle is Tatesujiruri Koganemochi. Doodlebug is Midorihime Onarashi. Iridescent glint beetle is Shoya Kogane. Three different genera. One is Koganemochi, one is Onarashi, and the other is simply Kogane, not Koganemochi. All in all, the Iffy things are stuffs that are lost in localization. Perhaps the localizer team are not adept in taxonomy, or at least not in both versions of taxonomy, which is understandable of course. Still, there is much room for improvement. Next, I want to talk about the confusing things, or at least stuffs that are unclear for me since I'm new to this series. First is the bulburbs. It is stated that dwarf bulburbs were initially identified as a juvenile bulburbs. The dwarf bulburb is called Kochappi in the Japanese version. The genus is Pansaurus, which is kind of funny to me by the way. It's a breadbug. The real bulburb is called Chappi in the Japanese version. The genus is Oculus, which is a member of the grub dog family. The albino dwarf bulburb is called Kochappi modoki in Japanese, which means resembling Kochappi or Kochappi mimic. It's actually Oculus kageyami larva, so it's the larva of the real bulburb. So, correct me if I'm wrong here. Pansaurus pseudooculi mimics the Oculus. Expedition members thought it was just a dwarf Oculus, so they named them dwarf bulburb. Then they found the albino dwarf bulburb, then named them that because they thought it mimics the dwarf bulburb. After quite a while, they figure out it's an entirely different animal, an entirely different family even, so they assigned them Pansaurus pseudooculi. Makes sense, but what's weird to me is, why keep the dwarf bulburb name? The common name, I mean. And also, why keep the albino dwarf bulburb name? Common name is very easy to change. Just change the Pansaurus pseudooculi common name to something else. Anyway, I looked further into the bulburbs. Dwarf orange bulborb is called Tenkochappi in Japanese. It's also a Pansaurus. Orange bulborb, called Tentenchappi in Japanese, is an oculus, actual bulborb. In dwarf orange bulborb note, the dwarf bulborb is written as dwarf red bulborb. So I started to get a pattern. I thought, if it's dwarf something bulborb, that's Pansaurus. If it's something dwarf bulborb, that's oculus larva. But then, dwarf frosty bulborb, called Konkochappi in Japanese, is Oculus tomagellus larva, second mold. The frosty bulborb, called Kinkinchappi, is Oculus tomagellus. In dwarf frosty bulborb note, it is stated that they thought it was a mimic breadbug, but actually not. So I guess the common name pattern is like I've stated. At least that's what they intended it to be. Dwarf something bulborb is mimic. Something dwarf bulborb is grubdog larva. The inconsistency is quite confusing. Perhaps that's intentional lore-wise, but as a fellow zoologist, I have to say to whoever made this guidebook or database, please just change the name, bro or sis. Use a consistent naming system. Do not confuse your audience. Another thing is the Empress bulbrax, Oculus kageami matriarchia. Does that mean it's an actual different subspecies than the red and orange bulborb? It's confusing because the name is not written in italic. Is that matriarchia is a subspecific epithet? Or is it just a word to state the condition? So I checked the Japanese version and its wame is Dememadara. The orange bulborb is Daidai Dememadara. The bulborb aka red bulborb is Beni Dememadara. The jumbo bulborb is also Beni Dememadara. The frosty bulborb is Shimotsuki Dememadara. So, Dememadara is the supposed genus. But remember, the Empress bulbrax is just called Dememadara, the genus. So, does that mean Empress bulbrax is the form of all reproductive bulborb? Like, all of the adult female bulborb turns into the Empress bulbrax? Form-wise, I mean? Another thing is about albino dwarf bulborb. In this state, it is difficult to discern what species of bulborb any given juvenile may be by appearance alone. By that logic, the pre-molt larva too, right? Because it's the previous instar. There are also crumbs in other species notes, such as the whip-tongue bulborb, which is an entirely different species by the way. It's stated that, until its second molt, this creature feeds with its teeth much like other grubdog species. So perhaps the early larvae of whip-tongue bulborb are also similar to the first instar, maybe even all bulborbs then. So, how could they classify them exactly? Because it's written as Oculus kageami here, not just Oculus, not question marks also. Should have just used confer. Or if it is indeed like this for many different species of the Oculus genus, just write it as Oculus spp. Or even, if it is like this for all members of the genus, just write Oculus, because the section is called scientific name, not species name, so it should be no problem. Thinking of the pre-second instar larva of the bulborb makes me check their wame. It's Dememadara for both of them. Remember what else is also just Dememadara? It's the Empress bulbrax. So, does that mean they also cannot actually pinpoint what kind of bulborb this is? Is that the intended implication for this? If so, then that's great, but the international localization is even more iffier. Next topic. It is stated that Pikmin is in the Ambuloradicis class, mix of plant and animal characteristics. In the creeping chrysanthemum note, it is stated that they share the same class as the Pikmin, so Ambuloradicis. But it is stated here that they are a form of plant. So by the rules of taxonomy, Pikmin should also be a form of plant. So it's kingdom Plantae. The note on the startle spore also confuses me. It says here, like Velo Ambuloradicis, the bulbmin, blah blah blah, the body is a parasite that has nestled inside a group of mushrooms. So, first question, what does the actual body looks like then? how small it is to be able to nestle inside a group of mushrooms. Does that also mean the creeping chrysanthemum is the same case? And how about the Pikmin? Is Pikmin's actual body is just inside the humanoid-looking body? Also, what is Bob mean? Is it a creature in previous games? If it is, I wonder how many creatures did not return in Pikmin 4. Anyway, same thing with the Ambulofungus. Is that also a class? And if so, what's the kingdom? So many questions. Oh, one last thing before I forget. I talk about the scientific names ending with double I in the Iffy sections, right? There are actually names with double I in this game that sounds fitting, which is Kageyami. Kageyami sounds like an actual name, but that makes me think, who's Kageyami? Are there anyone named Kageyami in the lore? Or maybe someone named Kageyami that is related to the game? Let me know if there is, otherwise it's also one of the Iffy names. Well, that's my insights on the species concept and classification. To sum it up, I really like the clarity they provide and I think the classification is also really good. Some of the misses are just localization errors. It would be nice if we get a classification for the higher ranks like some sort of phylogenetic tree, but it's fine, no big deal. If you've already watched the previous video, it might sound I got a lot more critics for Pikmin 4 than the one in my previous video. But that's just because this game offers a lot more to be talked about in the specific topic, so it's not a bad thing at all. It's really nice actually. Now, let me talk about some extra stuffs outside the topic of species concept and classifications. I think they did a great job with the notes and creature tidbits in this game. I really like the fact that the notes can be quite educational, like the entire note on the Jumbo Bulborb. The entire first paragraph talks about how polyploidy happens. The second paragraph explains the impact, and they even stated they will never reach sexual maturity. The note on horned cannon beetle educates about introgression. The jellyfloat notes educate about invasive species. The aristocrat note educate about the life cycle of crustacea, even specifying Zoea and Megalopa, which I am pretty sure most people won't even hear those words in their entire life. For me, the game is very easy, but that's good. I'm an RTS enjoyer. I love StarCraft, I love Age of Mythology, I played some Age of Empires, I also played Total War Warhammer. I also enjoy playing management games. In fact, my favorite video game to this point is Lobotomy Corporation, which is a management game. My point is, it's very easy for me because I am experienced in this genre. But that means the difficulty will probably be just right for a casual and younger audience. That means a lot of people can play Pikmin 4. Remember how I said the Piklopedia can be quite educational? If a lot of people could learn something new from the Piklopedia, that would be great, especially the younger audience. When I was an undergraduate student, the complaints I usually heard from others is that memorizing scientific terms and names can be difficult. But that have never been a problem for me. That's because I am already familiar with scientific terms and names since I was really young. I consume a lot of paleontology media, and those are filled with scientific terms and names. I've learned some Latin words way earlier than others, so in a way, I'm more prepared than them. That's my own background, my own lore. But I'm sure there are other persons like me, and there will be more. Well, at least I hope so. Which is why it's nice if more media could add these scientific tidbits so more people can learn, even from a younger ages. I think that's about it. I've been talking for quite a while now, way longer than I thought I would. If you share the same interest with me and you never played Pikmin, try Pikmin 4. It's nice. Oh, and for those of you who are veterans of this series, let me know if I'm missing critical information. Perhaps I'm missing context because I didn't play the previous games or stuff like that. It would be really nice if my questions can be answered. Oh, and you can also tell me if there are fan theories or fan-made classifications too. Could be a nice read for me. Anyway, enjoy your day.